Welcome to the Author Roundtable. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me tell you, this is one jam-packed roundtable with stories about surviving child abuse, growing up in Saudi Arabia in the 40s and 50s, inspiration through a famous motivational speaker, finding kindness and compassion in a difficult world, and second chances. But first, Eddie Sanders works in the aerospace industry in Virginia. But on the side, he's a singer, songwriter, and most important, literary advocate. Therein lies the story behind his book, If You Can Read, The Adventures of Literacy Man and the Literacy Kids.
Well, actually, the book was second. I actually was inspired to write a literacy anthem entitled If You Can Read. And after I recorded it and put the single out, the track out, I was inspired to write the book.
So somebody commissioned you to write a song about literacy?
Well, I was divinely inspired to write a song about literacy. I'm from Michigan originally, and I was a part of a group called Men of Color Read. And once a month, we would go to the elementary schools and read to the children. And I just noticed how many children didn't have mentors and fathers, and I saw some of the children who were in need of those things. So after I moved to Virginia, I didn't forget about that experience back in Michigan. And at one point I thought maybe I would start a program, a reading initiative like that here. But like I said, the song came first. And then I decided to write the book. And I knew that children like superheroes because I did when I was a young man. And it just came to mind, Literacy Man. And I said, no one is doing that. And I grew up telling my age, watching Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Verb superhero, you know, he just had, I was just in awe every Saturday when I watched him, and it was so captivating.
Yeah.
And I said, if it worked then, it will work now. So that's my motivation.
Wow. So we've got Literacy Man, the bow tie wearing superhero with a golden cape and a mission to defeat illiteracy, with Miss Read Well and the Literacy Kids, and then you name the Literacy Kids. You know, tell me about this book. You want to help kids conquer the real life struggles of fear of reading out loud, having a lisp, dyslexia, and contemplating dropping out. So how do you do that in this book?
How we do that in this book, first of all, I use my own personal experience. As a young man, I had a horrible lisp. I couldn't say an S to save my soul. And then on the other hand, the other children would heckle me when I would read out loud. But I was blessed with a speech therapist by the name of Patricia Manott, and she worked with me. And not only was she my speech therapist at school, we also attended the same church. So she would even steal a few minutes to work with me on Sunday morning after Sunday school because she saw the potential in me. And we eventually overcame that. But then I said, well, there are other children with other challenges beyond a list. And I could think of some of the other children that I grew up with who had anxiety and a fear of reading. And some had got to the point where they were so frustrated that they wanted to drop out of school, even at a young age of 9 and 10. So once again, if it happened back in the 70s, it's happening now.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, and even more so now. And I just wanted to be a source of hope, you know, in a kid-friendly type of manner. The literacy kids, of course, they are all diverse. So I wanted to, make sure I can land my hand on every person that walks, every child that walks the face of the earth, no matter what you look like, no matter what race, creed, or color. Illiteracy lives in those arenas as well.
Right.
So when they look at the literacy kids, I want them to say, hey, he looks like me or she looks like me, just to draw their attention. Everyone's included.
So what are your plans? What do you got in mind for this book?
I am registered with the Hampton Public Schools and Newport News Public Schools. So over the summer, I will be making videos, and I have a relationship with the youth at the church, and we will create a classroom setting and make videos in the meantime. But my goal is to enter the classrooms and give the children an opportunity to be excited about reading. I want them to be excited about their future just as much as I am, because I know that the children are our future. And I want to do everything I can to put my hand into shaping my own future through the children that I'm helping. And if I could just only help one, I believe it will be a success.
That's great. Oh, Eddie, that's wonderful. Any chance you can sing a little bit of that song for me?
Yes. Take a look along with me within a book, and you will see the power in the words you read. Will take you to your destiny. So open up your mind, read until the end. By the time that you are finished, share it with a friend. If you can read, if you can read, you can soar like an eagle across the 7 seas. If you can read, if you can read, you can climb every mountain, be all that you can be, if you can read. If you can read.
Eddie, what a beautiful voice. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Will there be more adventures of Literacy Man?
Yes, this is just the first edition right here. Yes, I've already started writing the second one.
Great.
So yes. Hopefully I'll be close by then to completion of that second book. Yes.
I'm looking forward to it. You are Eddie Sanders Jr., author of If You Can Read, The Adventures of Literacy Man and the Literacy Kids. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for calling.
A college professor in North Carolina teaching history, government, and economics, William James is grateful to have the time to write in his retirement, particularly about growing up in Saudi Arabia. Gone with the Shamal, growing up in the oil company compound of Dhahran, Saudi Arabia in the 40s and 50s. Now, how did you end up there?
Well, my father went to work for the oil company there right after World War II, or a year after World War II. He was not involved in oil operations, but he was a school teacher and a principal, and he was hired to go out and set up a school for the young Arab men so that they could be trained in various modern subjects and be employable with the company. And that's really what inspired this whole Gone with the Shamal project, was that when he was there by himself, the family could not come until there was housing 2 years later. But when he was there by himself, and the conditions were, it was really a pioneer town. He wrote back home to my mother at least a couple of times a week, and she saved all of his letters. And one of the things that she wished was that somebody would try to edit and preserve the letters after she passed away. And so I sat down to start digitizing them and realized there were a lot of things that he had never mentioned about those experiences, or if he had, I'd forgotten about them. And then I thought, well, my kids and grandkids know a little bit about, Pa, Grandpa, he was a kid in Arabia, but I never laid out a comprehensive picture of what it was like. And so that was the basis of the project, just first of all to pass something on to the children and grandchildren that would be a more complete picture of what their old man or their papa had experienced as a kid. And bigger audience would be the other peers of mine who grew up at the same time. They would probably appreciate it. And several have already written their memoirs, and they're quite good. And then finally, the people who came to Saudi Arabia after our time, they lived in a very different Saudi Arabia from what we had known in the 1940s and 1950s. That the Arab population, when my father arrived there, and in the years that, certainly the earlier years that we were there, they lived in great poverty, 99% illiteracy, disease everywhere, and just a totally different situation from the modern metropolises that they live in now. And the world has changed so dramatically, and I guess that was part of what inspired the title. It's all gone with the shamal, which is the word for the north winds and the sandstorms that blew in from the desert more frequently than we would have liked.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine a destitute Saudi Arabia, But there's a lot of stories in here that you say, some of them like episodes out of Leave It to Beaver.
Okay.
How old were you when you were there?
I went there when I was 3, and I did not depart for the last time until I was in my sophomore year of college. But the Leave It to Beaver part is that the oil company, in order to get people to come work there, they, over time, added many, many amenities to our lives there. We did not live among the natives. We had separate American compounds, and they built them up, and we lived a life similar to what a child living in a small town in the American Southwest would experience. And so we had our swimming pool in our schools, and my father eventually became the superintendent of all the company schools. And so we had modern schools. Our housing was ranch style, plenty of Californians and Texans around. And our living standards, I guess, at least by the mid-50s, were as good as or better than what kids living in the States at that time would have experienced. So we have these American towns plunked down in the middle of this very, very primitive country that was literally coming out of biblical times, if not the Middle Ages. While I was writing, my writing office is upstairs. My wife would be downstairs hearing me laughing away. The one that I laughed about the most was when we were traveling. And we had home leave every 2 years, and we would, while on route to and back from the States, we would do a lot of trips on the side. And in 1958, my father got the bright idea of buying a station wagon in the States. We loaded it on the boat, and then arrived at Copenhagen in Denmark, and the plan was to drive all the way down through Europe, down through Greece and Turkey and on into the Middle East. It all worked very well. The car stood up until a breakdown at the very end. But at one point, we were coming down through southern Yugoslavia. Then it wasn't Serbia and Bosnia and whatnot. And we had to sleep in the car because there weren't any hotels, or the roads were gravel. Finally got into Greece, and we were cruising along the Greek coastline near Thessalonica, and we spotted this very modern, recently built motel type inn right along the beach. And Tom and I, that was my brother's name, we went down to the beach, splashed around. As we were returning to our bungalow, the most incredibly and stunningly beautiful babe goes walking by in a bikini. Now, this is 1958, and we are teenage boys.
Say no more.
So my brother was 16 and I was 13. It's the subchapter called Stupid American Boys, because our astonishment at that incredible babe in the bikini was such that we took to staring a little bit too much, and eventually got chewed out by her. And then my folks came and what is going on here? And in the midst of being chewed out by the babe in the bikini, she was speaking every cuss word I suppose she knew in Greek, and she would spice it every other phrase or so with "stupid American boys, stupid American boys." So anyway, that's one that I think is the most fun. But as for adventures, I think the chapter that talks about the magnificent desert and all the fun we had camping out in the desert, meeting up with the Bedouin, the nomads. In those days, when you went out and camped on the desert, inevitably a Bedouin would come by with his goats, or you'd pass by a Bedouin encampment. And the rule of the desert was you always pay a visit. And my father was very fluent in Arabic, and I never learned much of the language, but in any case, that was the way it worked.
Wow. So exciting. How are people responding to this book?
Friends, relatives, and peers, they have been buying the book, and all reviews so far are positive. Thankfully, nobody said you're a lousy writer. I would be crushed.
No.
But I've been talking with a couple of people in the area, head of a civic group and a local bookstore, about doing a book signing, and one of them is set to go in September. The other is at City of Greensboro, and there's a Barnes & Noble there. And then finally, there is an organization of people who are the children that grew up in the oil fields of Arabia. They're called the Aramco Brats, and they have periodic reunions. And I've talked with them about doing a book signing, and they say that's great.
Are you going to keep writing?
Yes. If I can recoup my investment with this book, then I will be able to fund my father's letters, which I have spent a great deal of time editing. And one of the things that surprised me about his sojourn when he was there by himself, he never said anything about the fact that he was really homesick and he really missed his wife and kids.
Aww. And
had to fight the urge to give it all up. And a lot of people did. They just were too lonesome. And in the oil camp then, the Arabs had not banned alcohol, and so they let the American workers bring their liquor in, and the deal was don't ever consume it in front of a Muslim and don't ever serve it to a Muslim. And if you can abide by that, we'll let it go. And as a consequence, with all those men who were single or didn't have their families, a lot of them took to heavy drinking. And my father found that to be very annoying because he came from a pretty straight-laced family. He wasn't a teetotaler, but his folks, I know, were very straight-laced. So anyway, he fought a lot of homesickness.
I think you might be on your way to recouping your investment, and that's what I tell every writer that I talk to. It's like, listen, you might not be the next Stephen King, but if you get behind your book and you reach out to your audience and you really get behind your book, I know you can recoup your investment. So, William James, author of Gone with the Shamal. I look forward to seeing what's coming up next with you. Thanks for talking to me.
Well, it'll be called Letters from Old Arabia.
Nice. Inspired by a well-known motivational speaker, Dr. Carla Hooker found support and encouragement to write about what she knows best, her life. Her book is entitled, I Ain't Never Been Ordinary, Nor Have You. 10 Childhood Lessons for an Extraordinary Adulthood. Let me just ask you, what are you a doctor of?
I have an honorary doctorate in humanitarianism for my work with children over the past almost 40 years.
All right. And your inspiration?
I was inspired by Les Brown. I took a workshop with him 3 years ago, and it was called Your Signature Story. And he told me to tell him a story. And I was like, oh boy, nervous and excited at the same time, but knew I better not mess this up. And I told him a story about me being at dance class and my mother, I was teasing a kid and calling her a chicken head. And he said, a chicken face. And he said, you called her what? I said, a chicken face. And he just fell out laughing. And he said, oh my God, Carla. And then what happened? I said, when I got home, the young lady had told her mom, and her mom and my Aunt Betty were friends. They went to the same church. So my Aunt Betty called my best friend Dana because she was in on it too. Dana got a spanking, and then Dana's mom called my mom. Well, I was in my room playing with my Barbies, and the way my mom came in the room, I knew something was wrong. And she asked me, did you call that girl at dance school today a chicken face? And I was like, oh, shoot, I'm getting ready to get my butt beat. So she said, because Dana already got a whooping, and you're getting ready to get one too. And she was like, waving a ruler, or she either had a ruler or a switch. And I was like, I'm not getting beat with that, and I'm not getting a spanking, not today. And she said, Dana got to be beaten, I'm not getting one too. And when I said that like that, Les Brown and the whole crew just fell out laughing on a Zoom. And I was like, what? And he was like, Carla, I can picture all that. You're hilarious. He said, so you threw your best friend under the bus. I said, well, she already got a beating. Why did I need to get one too? And they all just rolled. He said, tell me another story. So I said, well, in kindergarten, I said, I'm like you. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, in kindergarten, I didn't get put in the closet like you. I said, but my teacher put me behind her desk. He said, what did you say? I said, my kindergarten teacher put me behind her desk because I talked too much. And then I would finish my work before everybody else, and she'd give me more work, and she'd call my mom, and my mom would say, give her more work, and I'd finish that, and everybody else would still be trying to form their letters and write their name or whatever they were doing. And I was hollering across the classroom trying to help everyone, because that's what I do. I said, nothing's changed. And he said, but she did what? I said, she got mad one day, and she just had it. I said, Mrs. Stubbs said, get up. And I thought she was letting me be her helper because she was pushing my desk towards hers. I said, but she moved me behind her desk to the point where when I raised my hand, she couldn't see me and nobody else could see me. I said, that didn't stop me from hollering out, but they just couldn't see me as easily as they could before. And he started laughing like I was tickling him and couldn't stop. And he said, girl, you need to tell those stories in a book. And I was like, really? He said, because you're funny. He said, and you're a natural storyteller. And I was just sitting there in awe because this is Les Brown. So I did it.
Well, I guess that's, he's like, what, the number one motivational speaker on the planet or something? Like he's...
Yeah, in the world.
In the world, yeah. So, I mean, how do you say no to him? If he says you should write a book, I guess you should take that to heart, right?
Yeah, I did it. And he was shocked 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, whenever I started, I didn't start the book right away. I started maybe 6 months later, and I was doing a little bit here, a little bit there. But I got serious with it and finished it up. And then I saw him on a Zoom with Forbes Riley, who's one of my coaches, and she's like my big sister. I didn't know when I first met him that he and Forbes were friends, like really good friends. He's her mentor, and she helps him with things. He helps her with things. Well, he popped on a birthday Zoom for her to celebrate her birthday. And she called me up because she likes to call me up because she likes my stories too. Anyway, long story short, he said, Carla, he said, Forbes, what are you doing with Carla in your room? She said, Carla's been in my house. Carla's family. He said, she sure is. And she said, what do you mean, Les? And he said, Carla's my girl. So I told him, I wrote the book. I told him, he remembered the stories I shared. And then he said, what publisher? Who's your publisher? And I said, Page Publishing House. And he said, excellent choice. And he said, what's the title of the book? And I said, I ain't never been ordinary, nor have you. He said, oh, Carla. And his whole face lit up. Now, this is in a room with hundreds of my friends from all over the world. Wow. And Forbes is just beaming like a proud mama and big sister. He said, and guess what? He said, who wrote the foreword? I said, well, Saj. He said, Saj. I said, Saj that was with you with real success. He said, oh, my Saj, Babyface. I said, right. He said, well, guess what? And I said, what, sir? And he said, I'm going to write the foreword too. Oh. And I just bawled. Like, I did the ugly cry, the snotty nose. Yeah. And everybody's cheering. And I'm bawling. And it took me a while to get myself together. And he said, Carla. And I said, yes, sir. And he was like, do you have anything else to say? And I said, yes. And I could barely get it out. I was like whispering. And I said, thank you. Aww. And he said, you're welcome. He said, this is not the last you'll hear of me. And, people say that all the time, right. But he's for real.
Yeah. So your book, it's not just childhood memories. You say it's about resilience.
Right.
So there's been some struggles along the way that you share.
Oh, yeah. I was born with sickle cell disease and thalassemia disease. Usually people have one or the other, but I have both. They have very similar symptoms, but they're two separate rare blood disorders. And I had to learn at an early age that my mom told me, you're going to hurt, you're going to be tired, you're going to be different sometimes than other kids and not allowed to do things, but I'll let you do whatever you feel that you can do. And my dad was the same way. It wasn't just my mother. It was both of my parents were very supportive. And I learned that even though I had my limitations, if I wanted to do something, if they told me no, I was going to try that much harder to do it. So that's where a lot of my resilience comes from having both of those diseases and having to battle situations and challenges every day that other people had no idea I was going through. And even now at 57, I wasn't expected to live this long. I had been told since I was a child I wasn't going to live to see my 18th birthday. Jeez. And I made it to 18. Yeah, I made it to 18 and then it was 21. And when I made it to 21, they were like, well, you're surviving the odds, especially with all these crises. So you might make it to 30, but live your life. And when I got to 30, I was like, you know what? Screw y'all. F y'all. I don't care. I'm fine. I'm going to live as long as God says I'm going to live. And I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do. So that's the resilience.
So you're saying, if you can make it through with faith and determination, so can anybody else.
It's all in us. Yeah. Yeah. It's in us. People are always searching for somebody else, something external to save them or help them, but it's already in you, I believe, from the time we're born. And even as children, I believe that we come here with that resilience and we come here knowing who we are and what we're supposed to be. But it's people in outside noise, that external, that gets in the way and tells you who you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to conform to be. And that's why I called it I Ain't Never Been Ordinary. That's why the picture of me at 4 is on the cover with a dress on with my legs spread open, kind of squatting like a guy would, because I did what I wanted to do. So, but it's inside you already.
Now, you've already been working with children.
Right.
So are you able to take your book to them?
Oh, yeah. I'm on the school board here in Lee County, Sanford, North Carolina. They know I wrote this book and 3 others, and I have a children's book out also. But this book, my board members, the chair of the board read it, and she was cracking up and called me, and she was like, Carla, this book really touched me. She said, oh, my God, you're amazing. So, yeah, it's not hard. My superintendent, I have a good relationship with him. All I have to do is just walk into the schools and talk to the principals and say, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to share some of these stories with the kids.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to keep writing?
Oh, yeah. I've got so many stories in my head. My brain never shuts off. This energy, this is who I am.
I'll probably talk to you again.
Absolutely.
Share some inspiration to these authors that are listening to this podcast going, I want to get started. I don't know how. I don't know how to market my book. How do I get it out there? What do you say to them?
I say to them, go with page publishing, but also just start. Pick up a pen, pick up a piece of paper, and just start. Once you write, the words are not just what's in your head. It's what's in your, it's already there in your brain, and what's in your brain is already in your heart. Put it on paper because somebody is waiting for your story. And if you don't get it out, then you're going to, as Les Brown says, go to the grave with your dreams.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. You are Dr. Carla Hooker, author of I Ain't Never Been Ordinary, Nor Have You, 10 Childhood Lessons for an Extraordinary Adulthood.
Thank you.
A supervisor for a healthcare company, Jaquade Fasakin, survived an extremely difficult childhood. She credits faith and perseverance for bringing her to the point where she's able to share her story in her book, Through the Fire. So, Jaquade, you decided back in 2014 you had to write your story so you could save people a lot of time. What do you mean by that?
We chased our tails for years trying to, overcome things. And I was like, if I can get this all in a book, then, this can really help someone younger struggling with these issues.
Well, what kind of issues do you talk about in the book?
Well, my mother, she was on drugs really bad and chose to leave me with my grandmother or whoever, it could be. And my father, he just was non-existent. Right about 4, my mom, she would come get me sometimes, but she would drop me off and go wherever she goes and leave me with men strangers. And it starts off with like pretty much them taking advantage of me sexually when I was 4.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was at the time I didn't know, but it was for them for money, for drugs. And she would leave me and my sister there. And then it just goes into, me growing up a little bit, and then my father appearing and me staying with my father, but he didn't ever let me outside. And when he did, I could only go to the playground. And when I was at the playground, someone took me and raped me. Then goes like a little further. I'm a teenager and I meet someone and they tell me they're older than me, that, they can help and it'll be great to me and everything like that. And I believe them. And however it goes, then I get pregnant at 14. I have a baby. Moving a little bit more forward, I raise him and do everything I can. I go to school, but I don't have a place to live. I try to turn myself into the state to be a foster child or anything like that, but they won't take me because they don't have any parental signatures. So I live from place to place and whatever have you not. My mom finally comes back again, says she's going to do well, and she's moved kind of far in Pennsylvania, but it's kind of a rural place. I go stay with her. She is good for about 2 months. She leaves and leaves me, my sister there, my son. And at that time, I'm probably about 16. And so I can't be on a lease of a place to live. So they give me an eviction with my sister and my son. So at that point, I decide I meet a boyfriend, and he sells drugs. I don't know too much about the selling of them and stuff, but if he can help me, then I felt it was a great decision. Well, that turned into a debacle because not only was he abusive, but it was all wrong, and so I ended up going to jail. I go to jail for almost a year. I come out and get my kids, and then that's when I moved back here to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it never ceases to stop. I didn't have a place to live. My grandmother told me I couldn't stay with her with my kids, so I kind of had to figure it out, couch surf, and I just started working really hard and things of that nature. But at some point, I think I started having a nervous breakdown. I seen a therapist. Therapist told me I didn't know why I was alive. How could I be going through, or how could I have gone through all this? I felt so hopeless. So at that point, I started turning to alcohol. And then before I know it, I've become an alcoholic. I may be a functioning alcoholic because it's not like somebody everyone knew, but I did.
Right.
And in between, I've had like 2 more kids. But I've become a functioning alcoholic, and it's really terrible. To the point like I don't even care about myself or anything like that, and I even consider suicide. Then there have been a couple more sexual assaults in between, like my boyfriend being a drug dealer and stuff like that with other people. But when I move forward, and I go to the doctors because I'm having some stomach issues, and I think it's because I've been drinking, so maybe that's the issue, or I don't know. But then I found out I have cancer. At that time that I have cancer, I found out my mom had cancer as well at the same time. So when I was trying to take care of her, I went to the doctor for my stomach, and that's when I found out I had cancer. So we had cancer at the same time.
Oh, geez, Jaquade, this is unbelievable.
Yes. And I'm leaving a lot of that stuff, like just a little bit out, like.
You say you wrote this book to save people trouble. I mean, it's not like you weren't trying.
Weren't trying. It was very terrible. I tried on every level. I even tried with church, and I almost got raped there. So it's brought by the pastor. So through every single thing, like there were things that I did to like persevere and like have faith in God so much, even though I knew it would turn around, but I just didn't know when. But I kept doing the right thing. Just because I was raped, I didn't like turn into like a sexual predator, or just because someone would steal stuff from me, my innocence, things, stuff like that, I wouldn't return the favor and do it back, or become bitter at my parents, where you can't live your life because you're so caught up in what they've done to you that you carry that for 40 years and they're dead and gone, and you're still licking your wounds,
Yeah.
So pretty much at the end, it just sums up the growth, how I have everything kind of I want. Like you wouldn't think that a person that had all that going for them would almost make $100,000 persevere from making $6.25, and that's just the grace of God that I have pretty much the life that I always wanted, and that's all testimony to God. I never want for anything at all because I've always done the right thing, even though the wrong thing was happening.
Right. Wow, you were tested big time throughout your life.
Yes, it was meant for that. So I knew, that's why I said back a long time ago, I knew it had to be in a book because no one will believe, oh, this happened to me. Well, that too. Me, I did that. I know, me too. It was just like too many things, like, one person, one thing, one rape, they're done for the lifetime. Like, so this was like, I have to put this in here, this miscarriages and things of that nature, like every single thing that could happen to a person. I always say that there's nothing. Don't look at something and go, did that happen to Sarah? Yeah, it did. And now I just try to help people every single second of my time in life. Like me being a supervisor at this company, I help people to try to move further in the company all the time. I give rides to people I see walking. I give charitable money. I do stuff at church. Like anything I can do to help people, I try, because I never want anybody to be going through anything that I've been going through and never had any help.
Did it help you to write it all down?
Oh, yes, it did. I wrote it in a day and a half. And through the whole thing, I was just a waterfall. Like I cried and cried and cried, but I kept writing and just went with whatever was in my head. And that was it. And there was no going back. There was no nothing. That was just what it was going to be.
Well, good for you. Is anybody helping you with your book in terms of getting it out there?
So I wasn't really a social media person that much. So I've been trying to do stuff like on social media, and I thought about well, I have been trying to like set up stuff for that, and it's the old fashioned stuff. I put flyers all around, um, anywhere I go. I when I give copies of my book out to someone I know that's like kind of like knows a lot of people, or a lot like organizations that know, because I never know, they might not, but I at least try. So I try a lot of different ways. I know with anything else that worked out in my life, once God says it's going to, it will.
Good enough. You are Jaquade Fasakin, author of Through the Fire. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh, thank you.
J.T. Fox is a retired X-ray tech who's been writing for the last 10 years. Second Serve is his first published book for Fulton, and your daughter played a part in this story of second chances, didn't she?
I actually started out, I wanted to write a play. My daughter, who is a theater girl, wanted to take an adult acting class. She was about 15. And I didn't want her to take it unless, I was there, because I was, with adults and a 15-year-old. There's some characters that take these classes. And I was sitting watching the classes go on, and I thought to myself, there's a story in here somewhere. I wasn't really sure how to write, a novel. So I said, well, maybe I'll try and write a play. And I wrote the first act of a play, but then my computer busted down on me and I lost everything.
Oh.
So I guess, I don't know, that was the summertime. I guess I was complaining about how I had this great play and now it's all gone. I did all that work and I have no computer. And then when my birthday came around, my family bought me a laptop computer and said, start writing again. And by that time I had this story for Second Serve in my head, and I tried to write that down as a novel. And that's how I started.
Why Second Serve?
It was a story, when you lay in bed and your mind is racing, I call it counting sheep. I've had this story in my head for a long time about a tennis player, because I'm I'm not a professional, but I enjoy playing tennis. I'm a weekend warrior. And I had all these scenarios about, what if a tennis player had this to overcome? And what if a tennis player met this person? What would they do? And what would happen if a tennis player had an underhanded coach that always tried to demean him? And every night I would think and create this story in my head. And by the time I got the new computer, I'm going to put this down. And it just started to almost write itself, because I guess I've been planning in my head for so long. So the story is, it's a tennis player. He's a prodigy. He's a tremendous athlete from Brooklyn. He comes from a kind of a broken up, dysfunctional family, but they pull it together. He gets scouted by a coach who is in an academy in Florida, and he's a selfish guy that just wants to make money, and he knows he has a moneymaker with this kid Jesse, who's the main character, and the family lets him go to the tennis camp as a young kid, get schooling and play tennis there, and just as he's coming of age, he has this terrible injury, and it's a bad knee injury, and he's not the tennis player he was. So the academy just dumps him, and 18 years old sends him out on the street. But there's a tragedy with his family, and he winds up being all alone. And he just kind of like, the only thing he can do is just drift from place to place. So he gets himself a little toten camper, and he goes from place to place camping, and he makes his money either working at the campground or teaching tennis lessons. And in one of the campgrounds, he runs across an old man who once played in the U.S. Open in the 1950s, who was a big tennis guy, who also had sort of a tragedy in his life. And they build up a friendship, and they train together, and he becomes the new coach, and they start to win tournaments and qualify for the U.S. Open. And he runs into his old coach, who, is now nervous because the kid is playing good because his knee is healed. And it takes off from there.
Whoa, nice.
I kind of consider it like a tennis Rocky kind of book, or Karate Kid, underdog that makes good.
Okay.
some people had said, oh, you should write a sequel, but I really kind of put an end on it then.
Okay. Do people know you wrote this book?
People I know I wrote the book. I do have plans to try and find someone to help me build a website. And I would like to have a website, and I want to do a couple of book signings. There's a local bookstore in my area. And I mean, it's going to take a little while, but my plan is to go to bookstores, give out my website, talk about my book. I have other books out also, and see if I could build a little following that way.
All right. Are you going to keep writing?
Yes, I'm sitting in my office finishing the last chapter of another book right now.
Okay, so why did you go with Fulton Books?
You got to do your research. My first book, I wasn't happy with who I went to. I didn't think that they were really delivering what they promised. And then when I researched Fulton Books, it got very high marks on all the Writer Beware and all the other good, websites that critique these publishers. And I also thought they did a lot for me as far as the editing, the cover, the promotion. These phone calls are great. I think they help. So I think they were, and the person I worked with was very nice and very helpful and always available. So I was happy with Fulton.
Good. Okay. Any advice for people out there listening to the podcast because they want to write? Any words of wisdom for them?
You should always write. Start a journal. That's what I started doing. I started a journal, and sometimes I'll look back to 2 years ago. What was I doing that day? And I looked the way I wrote. I said, I should have wrote it this way because I could have been more descriptive. And if you have an idea, just start writing and write it down, and it'll grow. Sometimes these books write themselves because you get one idea, and it's like, oh, what if this happened? Oh, now this should happen, and they write themselves.
Yeah, like you were saying, you're laying in bed and you're thinking, you thought this story through, it sounds like, for over a good period of time before you actually put it down on paper.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had the beginning, I had the end, and the middle. Every night I'd be like, oh, what if he went here and did this? And it writes itself.
That's great. All right. You are J.T. Fox, author of Second Serve. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you for calling.
Kim Castillo has been writing short stories for most of her life. She recently retired as an editor for a publishing company, and now she writes on the side. The Mystical Sanctuary is her first published book. The subtitle, A Mystical Tale of Friendship, Tarot, and Compassion for Animals. Now, Kim, you worked for a math publishing company, correct?
Yeah, math, math lessons, math word problems, stuff like that.
Did that make it a little easier for you to put your book together?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
But why did you decide to publish this book?
I feel like I had a very strong message. Things have been so crazy in the world, and there's so much negative and bad stuff going on. And I wanted to put something out there that was positive and uplifting and kind of giving that message of kindness and compassion and, helping people through grief and, giving people and animals a second chance. So it's about 3 women, 3 widows who decide to buy a farm, and they start an animal sanctuary there. So it's about their relationship with each other, but also about the animals and how they take care of the animals as they come to the sanctuary. And, but it's also about the relationships between the people. And then mixed in, I have one of the characters, she reads tarot. And I am not a tarot expert, but it's something I'm very fascinated by. So I just kind of wove that through the story in different places, just to kind of give it something a little different, a little more mystical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they come together and they build this sanctuary, and a wounded hawk appears at Tiffany's door. Tell me about that.
Well, they were outside and they noticed a hawk flying around, but then they noticed that it was not flying correctly, that something was wrong with its wing. And then they saw it fall to the ground. So they rushed over and, took care of it. They wrapped it up and, they just gave it care. And then a few days later, they came back and it was gone and it had flown away. And it reappeared. It reappeared a couple of times throughout the book, but that was just one small animal. They also rescued a cow, a donkey, a goat came to the house that was pregnant. So they had 3 baby goats plus the mama goat.
And then tied in with this are these letters that are found from the 1940s.
Yes, right. So there were apparently 3 women that were doing kind of the same thing, but, almost 50, 60, 70 years ago. And they left messages. And also there are things that happen throughout the book that are sort of paranormal. Like in their letters, they mention different things and then they happen. For example, a clock that wasn't working would start ticking and then it happened.
As if these 3 women from the letters are reaching out to them, reaching to them.
Yes, they are.
Does the tarot card reader help in kind of connecting to these other women?
Yes. I mean, she keeps a journal of what's going on. She doesn't summon them in this book, but they just, like at the very end, they have a ceremony and all the animals gather and the women actually appear very briefly. So one of the 3 ladies of the modern day women is extremely skeptical. And she always, pushes aside the things that are happening as, oh, well, it's just this or that,
Right. Coincidence.
Yeah. And, but at the end of the book, when, they see these figures and it's very brief, they just appear and they nod, I believe. And so that kind of changes Charlotte a bit, but then you'll see in the next book, it's so normal that people, even when it's right in front of their faces, they don't believe or they just brush it off. I've seen and heard that time and time again from things that I read and listen to, and it just blows my mind. So yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about the sequel.
Yeah, it's going to be shortly after the end of the first book, and I don't have it all. I mean, it's not all done, of course, but
okay.
It's going to be sort of a continuation of, the animals and things that happened. But this time, so at the beginning, they notice a white truck driving around, and the bottom line is that a developer wants to buy their land, and so that's going to be part of the story.
Oh,
yeah,
now that's a problem.
And yes, yeah. This is a stronger, like, problem solution kind of book. The other one, it wasn't really a problem so much. It's just an unfolded. But this is going to be more like that. But also, and again, I haven't fully developed all of my ideas yet. But so they're going to start viewing or seeing the women more in different ways, like seeing them or hearing them. And what it's going to come down to is, I don't know if I should give this away, and I'm not even sure if this is how I'm going to make it, but I think that these 3 women are going to be a reincarnation of those 3 women.
Oh,
so
maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah. So
many layers.
Well, there's a lot of layers, and this has just been a really good way for me to kind of express it and make a story out of it.
Right. Yeah.
and kind of push forward a gentle message about, compassion for animals and people, but mostly the animals.
But the big question is, and you've got a lot on your plate, like getting it out there.
I have a blog that I started shortly before the book was published, and it wasn't just about the book, and it's not just about the book. It's about a bunch of different things related, like vegetarianism, creativity. And then I would start, when I knew the book was about to be published, I would start to talk about it in my blog. And now that it is published, I post on Facebook maybe once a week and mention either something about the book, like I'll probably mention that I'm on a podcast.
Good.
But then I link, or I suggest that they go to my blog to read more about, whatever the subject is.
Okay.
My blog is simplycuriousliving.com. And then I also post on LinkedIn in their book publishing group, but I don't publish everything in there. I don't put, things that aren't related to publishing books on LinkedIn. It's mostly about the book and my experience in publishing the book and things that are more book publishing related.
Okay, that makes sense. Did you have a good experience publishing this book?
Yes. Yeah, I did. I really thought it through about how I wanted to try to do it. And it was sort of a hybrid production of it, because I'm not known enough to try to go to a major publisher. And I looked into self-publishing, and I just thought there's so much here that I would have to learn. So I ended up going with Page Publishing, and I had to pay for it, and I don't know if I'll ever get my money back, but that wasn't my reason for publishing it. If I make money from it, great. If I don't, that's okay. Oh, I also had an audiobook made of it.
Great.
Oh, another thing I did recently is I had someone do SEO, search engine optimization.
Okay.
This woman from Bangladesh. And I do see more traffic on my Facebook and LinkedIn. And I do have it open for comments, but I don't get that many comments. And it's only people that I know. So,
all right.
This is a process.
Yeah, give it some time.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yep. But I do want to get it out there. So
this would be a great book club book.
So one of my posts is about a book club and about, doing a book club with this book. In fact, I created a book club discussion guide that people can get if they go on my blog for free.
That's great.
Yeah.
You are Kim Castillo, author of The Mystical Sanctuary, a mystical tale of friendship, tarot, and compassion for animals. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is the only podcast where independent new authors come first.